Hey, my name is Rowan Smith and I want to welcome you to the Training for Trekking podcast. Now, this is the world's very first podcast which is entirely dedicated to helping you train, prepare and conquer your upcoming hike, trek or mountain adventure. So once a week, I'm going to be giving you quality and practical information on the subjects of physical preparation for trekking, dealing with altitude and nutrition on the trail, so you can know everything you need to be doing to have the best chance of a safe, enjoyable and successful adventure. So now you know what you're in for, let's get into today's episode. Alright guys, so today's episode we are talking about how to prepare your body for uneven terrain while hiking. Now this is a question that pops up again and again and again from my clients, from people who follow me online, so I thought I'd do a bit of an episode around it because it is a really, really common thing. Basically, so many people have adventures in their sights, whether it's a hike, a trek, or a mountain adventure, which they know is going to involve a reasonable amount of uneven terrain. So whether that's mud, whether it's traverses, whether it's super rough tracks or sleet, even snow, they know that's going to add a huge extra element to their hiking. And for people who live near, lots of national parks and they get access to types of things like this and types of terrain like this, preparation isn't quite as scary because they're like, look, I can just hit the trail, I can go out, get used to this and, my body will adapt and I'll be pretty confident with it. Alternatively, if you don't live near something like this, it can be a bit stressful. Now, a great example here is when I was 18, I was over in Brazil and I was doing a trek over in a national park in Bahia. And we basically signed up for a hike with a local guide. It was just me and another girl we'd never met before. And we're both Aussies. We rolled over there and then we got to the trailhead, walked for a couple of hours. And then for the next probably 4 or 5 hours, it was all rock hopping. So jumping from rock to rock to rock along a dry riverbed as we were going to a waterfall, and that was the route. Now for me, growing up near the beach, rock hopping every single weekend when I was surfing, when I was a kid, this was no worries at all. I was perfectly happy with it. However, alternatively, the other girl on there, Sarah, she'd grown up in the country. She'd never done any of that in her life, never spent any time at the beach, never really gone in, riverbeds or anything like that, or dry riverbeds, I should say. And it was completely foreign to her. And it was such a struggle for her going through this adventure. She wasn't unnecessarily unfit. She wasn't inexperienced. It was just such a foreign terrain to her. And she was not ready for it. So physically, she really, really struggled. And mentally, she was so out of sorts. And she really didn't enjoy that day at all, which is a really big shame. And this is a really common thing you hear from hikers. It's not just rock hopping. It's all those other things. It's mud, it's sleet, it's traverses. All of that stuff. So today I'm just going to talk you through a few bits and pieces. First couple of things are going to be specific stuff around your preparation, which you want to work on, which is going to help you for that. And then also a couple of mental techniques, which might help you in the actual situation get through it. So the very first thing that anyone wants to do when they're preparing for a hike on an uneven terrain is simply, obviously, get out and hike. That's the answer to everything. As I said, not everyone always has access to rough tracks, but that doesn't really matter. Hiking on any type of trail is always going to be a little bit more uneven, a little bit rougher than walking on a treadmill or just walking around your neighborhood. So if you do have the luxury of getting out and hiking, obviously that's going to be as much as you can. Once a week, ideally, if not once every 2 weeks, if not when you can. I'm not going to dive into that too much more. It's more or less common sense. The next thing that you want to do and that every single person can be doing is strength training. Now, I talk about strength training as beneficial for absolutely everything on the trail because it almost is. And particularly for this uneven terrain, it is so, so important. Now, mainly for 2 reasons in this situation. Number 1, stronger muscles generally tend to be more stable. Meaning, if you're stepping on, let's say, some uneven rocks and you are stepping and it's wobbling around you and you can't deal with your balance, you can't deal with stabilizing yourself on that, it's not going to be a good time. Alternatively, if you do the same trail after doing 8 weeks of strength training, your muscles are a bit stronger, they're a bit more switched on, they're a little bit more in sync with the body and a little bit more efficient. As you're stepping, it's unstable. The muscles are going to be able to work harder, work more efficiently, and just be able to keep you stable. I was probably, for anyone with a health coaching background who's listening to that, I probably butchered that explanation, but the principle is basically right. Stronger muscles are going to be more effective here. Now, specifically, if you're doing hiking, you want to be looking at single leg strength specifically. So doing things like split squats, doing things like single leg deadlifts, doing things like step downs, all those things that probably should be part of anyone else's preparation program, that is all going to be super relevant for this. And the stronger you can get, the more happy you're going to be in this situation. Second, and almost more importantly, is stronger muscles are less likely to get injured. So if you do happen to have a slip, a stumble, or a fall in this rough terrain, which more than likely you probably will have a few of, if you have stronger muscles, there's less chance of you sort of straining your hamstring. There's less chance of you pulling your calf. There's less chance of you falling over and throwing your back out, things like that. So literally just having that extra strength and extra stability in the muscles really goes a long way. Some people in this situation, they will say, look, I've got uneven terrain. It's a little bit wobbly. It's a little bit dodgy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in the gym. I'm going to train on an uneven surface. So that generally looks like something like a Swiss ball or a Bosu ball, which are those sort of half balls in the gym, or a stability disc. And the theory goes is, look, I'm going to stand on these. I'm going to do exercise on these. This is apparently going to turn my core on. It's going to get me used to the unstableness, and it's going to help me on the track. In theory, yeah, that sounds great. In practice, not so much. The main thing you're looking for in strength training does come down to the amount of force your body can produce. Now, force is basically the stimulus that gives the body a reason to adapt and change. So meaning it gives a reason to increase muscle strength and size. It gives a reasons to increase the connections between your brains and your muscles, which we talked about the other week. And just the ability for the body to produce force is probably the main stimulus you're looking at. So when it comes to strength training, that's when people are adding on extra weight. It doesn't have to be a huge amount of weight, but it's a little more weight than the body's used to. Or alternatively, doing an exercise which puts a little bit more strain through the body and makes it take a little bit extra force as you're going through. Now, the issue with Swiss balls, Bosu balls, stability discs, or any other hyper unstable surface training is it reduces the amount of weight or the amount of force you can apply into the ground. Meaning, if you were doing a squat on the floor compared to a squat on a Swiss ball, you're going to be able to move and shift a whole bunch more weight and put a lot more force into the floor when you're standing on the floor. As opposed to if you're on a Swiss ball, you're going to spend all your time trying to balance and trying to think about it, and it's just not going to be very, very effective. That's not to say it won't improve your balance, because it probably will in some way or another, but if you're training strength, you want to be training strength in its purest form possible. You don't want to be compromising. You don't want to be mixing and matching other things, which is going to reduce the benefits of the actual strength. Because as I said, it's so important there for your stability. And as we said in the podcast a million times, there's a whole bunch of different reasons why strength is so critical for hikers and trekkers. And you don't want to be compromising that. So as a general blanket rule, if you do see things like with a squat or a lunge, or something where you're working on an unstable surface, I probably would recommend against it. The next one you want to be talking about is proprioception training, which I previously talked about in a couple of other episodes. Basically, proprioception is the ability of your body to be aware of where it is in space. So if you are taking a step and you're not looking, does your body actually know where your foot is? If you have bad proprioception, it won't. And it's not very great in this situation where you have uneven terrain, where things are slipping and sliding, where you're not 100% sure where you're stepping. However, if your body is really, really aware of where your actual foot is, how it's moving, where it's placing, and all of that, this is going to be super, super beneficial. Now, not only is it going to, prevent the risk of injury if something slides away from you, not only is it going to make your walking speed a little bit quicker, it's going to greatly increase your confidence as you're stepping. And, if you are going on these hikes and you have to be stressing about every single step you take, it just drains you really, really quickly. So if you can be confident in your body to know if it's in a good position, if it's stepping correctly, and if it is in a safe position, that's really, really good. So proprioception training and balance training, it doesn't have to be too complicated, really. Initially, a test I use with my clients is I'll get them to stand on some type of slightly soft surface. So usually in a gym, this would be an exercise mat or a yoga mat. And all you're going to do, stand on one leg, close your eyes, and you're going to hold that as long as you can. Generally, as a test, I sort of try to get my clients, if they can do it for a minute or more, I'm pretty happy with that. If they can't, they got a little bit of work to do. So that's when we might put in a little bit of proprioception training into their week. So this would be things like doing exactly that, single leg stands with your eyes closed. You might start do that for a little while. Once you can do that pretty comfortably, you might do a single leg stand on a pillow. And then there's other things of doing little single leg balance, and you step and reach over, you pick something up in front of you, then you pick something up behind you, and then you pick something up to the side of you. There's a million and one drills there. It doesn't have to be too complicated, but the idea is eventually you're slowly stressing the body a little bit more, challenging its awareness in space, challenging its balance, and it can go a long way for this uneven terrain. And then the final thing I want to talk about now is those two are the main things for your physical preparation before you go. When you're actually on the trail and when you're actually in this situation, there's a couple of things which will most likely happen. Now, the main issue is you can get really, really stressed. As I said before, if you are stressed, if you're really, really worried about stepping in the mud, stepping on an unstable surface, going across the traverse, whatever, and you're worrying about it, you're going to get drained, you're going to get depleted, you're going to get exhausted really quickly, and it's not a good look. It just really, really sucks, and you don't want to be in that situation. So if you aren't doing it and you do notice that your thoughts are getting out of control, your heart rate's pumping, and you're really, really struggling, one really simple technique is to do something called belly breathing. And it's a really, really simple technique that you can use more or less anywhere. And this is exactly the same for if you're scared of heights or anything like that. Basically, all you're going to do is you're going to take a big breath in through the nose, as big as you can, and as you breathe in through the nose, you're going to try and feel your belly expand. So as opposed to the chest and shoulders going up, you want to take in the air and feel the belly expand. Now what you're going to do is once that belly is to full capacity, you're going to hold that breath for as long as you can. As long as you comfortably can, I should say. So you don't have to get red-faced and dizzy, but just as long as you comfortably can. And then you exhale nice and slowly. And then you'll do that 2 or 3 times. Literally breathe in, big breath in, feel the belly expand, hold it for as long as you can, and exhale. Now, this can be a really effective technique just to help the body relax, recalm, chill out, just get it from that really, really flight or fight response to something a little bit more relaxed and calm. And you can do this whenever you get a little bit stressed, and it can be very effective for people who struggle in these situations. The other thing is sometimes people will switch off and they'll go the other way, and they'll be so tired and mentally fatigued that they'll be going across this uneven terrain or this dodgy part of track, and they just won't be concentrating. They won't be focused, and they won't be with it. Now, this actually happened to me on my trip at Kokoda, which was, it was an absolute shocker. So we've been on a big day. We've probably been walking, 9 hours, 10 hours, something like that. It was a really, really big day. It was raining all day, so we didn't really stop huge amount for lunch. I was absolutely knackered. And we'd been walking all day. We got through it all right, but by the end, I was well and truly done. And we're coming into camp, and literally camp was in sight, and we were just walking along some river stones, and we were probably 50 meters away from camp after a 10-hour day. And at that stage, I was so tired, and I saw the camp. I literally just switched off. I wasn't really thinking, slipped on a rock, had a bit of a tumble down the cliff, probably fell about 3 or 4 meters, stood up. I was perfectly fine. I was so lucky, but that could have been a game ender. But basically, that came from me just being switched off and not being with it. So if you do find yourself in this situation where you know you're going to be switching off, there's something called a one-word focus, which can be pretty effective. So the one-word focus is basically a focus technique. You want to be thinking about anything in your life, any situation where you need to focus. And this one word that you're going to come up with in a second is basically just a trigger, just to say, hey, look, it's time to get sorted. It's time to get in the zone. It's time to bring everything back in. So you might use this, at work if you're zoning out, in your study if you're studying. You might use it in your training if you're completely out, or on the trail if you're zoning out. So all you really need to do is think about a situation in your past that you can remember in which you're super in the zone, super focused, super clear on whatever intentions you're trying to do. So this might have been in a sporting event, in a business meeting, it might be in a conversation you're having with your partner, it might just be in anything in your life, which is a clear memory of you just being right in the zone. Now, as you relive this memory, I want you to go through step by step by step, as much detail as you can remember about this memory, and then try to just think of the first word that pops in your head to describe how you felt. It could be anything. It could be focus. It could be clear. It could be free. It could be zoning. It could be literally anything. It really depends on you. But what you want to do is whatever that first word that pops in your head, you're going to write it down. Write it down on a paper. And then you're going to cue yourself every time you need to get in the zone, get a little bit clearer on what you're doing, snap yourself out of daydreaming. You just want to remind yourself of that word. Now, I've heard people of writing that on their hand and just carrying around day to day. I've heard people of getting little bracelets made and leaving it on their arms because they use that as a technique in their sporting pursuits and just to get them in the zone. So just do whatever you need to do to remind yourself to use this word in the next couple of weeks. And the more you use it, the more powerful it will come, as with most mindset techniques. So practice it. And then when you find yourself in a situation where you desperately need to get clear and get focused, it will come to you in an instant. And you can go, Rowan, focus, and you're in the zone. That can be really, really powerful, and I would recommend anyone who does know they stress about or struggle a little bit with uneven terrain can be very, very effective. So that's probably about enough from me today, guys. I hope you got a little bit out of that, a little bit extra information if you are struggling in this situation. If anything wasn't so clear, as always, please reach out to me, whether you find me on the Training for Hiking and Trekking Facebook page. You can reach out to me, ask me a question anytime, or swing me an email. But I do hope you've enjoyed this episode today, guys, and we'll talk to you very, very soon.